Banks.
Present.
Dr. Collins. Tamayo.
Present.
Reyes.
Present.
Guy. Present. Akil.
Present.
Ingendella.
Present.
Valdez.
Present.
Let the record show that all members of the Citizen Review Board are present, with the exception of Dr. Collins. At this time, I will ask, I recognize our invitation has been answered, and our state attorney is present from the 13th Judicial Circuit. So the chair is open to the motion if you all wish to move that item up on the agenda to have that presentation next.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Irene Guy has made the motion to move the item of CRB, item 8 to the agenda next. Board Member Leakin Tamayo has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll continue with the vote. All those in favor, please show by raising hand. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Continuing with item 8 of the agenda of Community and Tampa Police Department matters. Tonight, we welcome the presence of Susan Lopez, our State Attorney of the 13th Judicial Circuit. If you will, please approach the podium.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Quite welcome. Welcome.
Thank you very much. May I begin, sir?
If you will, please.
Thank you very much. I'd like to first thank you all for the opportunity for me to speak to this distinguished group. I'm glad that our schedules have finally had the opportunity to align since I took office in August of 2022. I have been asked this evening to address our office's approach to cases involving bicycle stops. I want to make it clear to this board that my office is not implementing a program regarding bicycle stops. My office's role in bicycle stop cases is in limited situations when the Tampa Police Department conducts a traffic stop, which is an infraction, and following that infraction, it is discovered that a crime has occurred. The case then is referred to my office for investigation and a potential filing decision. As you heard in a prior presentation several months ago, there is no reinstitution of any program. As prosecutors, the assistant state attorneys who work with me and I are not focused on whether a defendant is stopped in a car or on a bike. We must focus on the facts of the case and decide whether or not charges are warranted. In fact, our office does not keep statistics about cases that begin with a bicycle stop, and our office never has kept those statistics. Our agency cannot pick and choose which laws it is that we enforce. It is important for our attorneys to stop and take a look at every single case that is referred to our office for prosecution by law enforcement. The old policies took that away from us in many ways, and we need to, and we have, gotten back to basics. According to Tampa Police statistics, in the year 2022, bicycle stops accounted for 0.6% of traffic stops within the city of Tampa. In the prior administration, prior to August of 2022, the state attorney's office simply no-filed or did not file charges on many of these cases without reviewing the facts of the cases, the underlying facts. The only thing that has changed under my administration is that we are not choosing which laws to enforce. We review cases one by one on a case-by-case basis, no matter what the charge is, from a misdemeanor to a felony. And we make decisions only based on what are the laws of the state of Florida. When we receive a case from the Tampa Police Department, whether a person is stopped on a bike or in a car, we make that charging decision based on the facts of the case and the laws of the state of Florida. We are bound to follow and enforce the laws, and that is in fact what we do. It is critically important that my office work hand in hand with the Tampa Police Department, as well as other law enforcement agencies within the county, in the interest of public safety. When I arrived as the state attorney in August of 2022, the relationship between the state attorney's office and the Tampa Police Department was broken. That had a negative impact not only on the people who dedicate their lives every day to serve this city and this community, but also it had an impact on public safety. Trust within our own communities was not there. I have made it one of the top priorities of my administration to restore relationships with law enforcement. That will only help our citizens and create better, safer neighborhoods for everyone. Part of the reason why the trust was broken between the state attorney's office and our local law enforcement is because there was a perception that people who broke the law prior to my administration were getting a free pass. Without this close relationship that I have worked very hard with the Tampa Police Department and other law enforcement agencies to rebuild, we cannot do the most important part of our job, which is going after the most serious offenders and protecting public safety, our neighborhoods, our children. The office focuses the bulk of our resources on the most violent and serious offenders. We have a gun unit, a gun violence unit that is dedicated solely to the most serious, prolific offenders in our city and in our county. We meet weekly, I meet included, we meet weekly with the Tampa Police Department and the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office to analyze crime trends, see where crimes are occurring, what we can do to prevent those crimes, and discuss tactics to get those serious offenders off of the street. There are also, though, aside from the specialty prosecutors that we have in the gun violence unit, we have a major crimes division as well. That focuses solely on our homicides. Other attorneys in the office also prosecute homicides, but major crimes is made up of senior, very seasoned attorneys who work on homicide cases. There are, of course, other crimes that are happening in our city and in our county, and there are dozens of attorneys who handle those low-level crimes. These are important because those crimes also have victims. The victims may not be deceased, they may not have a next of kin, but those crimes also have victims, and they still pose a threat to our community and its safety. To have a successful and functional relationship with local law enforcement, we work independently of those agencies. However, we do speak, communicate, and collaborate with a focus on communication and respect. Respect comes in both sides, from our law enforcement agencies and from our office, for the roles and the boundaries of each agency. When I made some policy decisions in August and did reverse some of my predecessors' policies, it was about taking the time to stop and review each case that we were referred for prosecution. We do not rubber stamp the actions of any agency. While I have made changes, I have also kept programs that have worked, have proven to work, and enhance our community. Programs, for example, like Colonel Reyes. Colonel Reyes has been a benchmark and a leader in our Veterans Treatment Court. We are the second Veterans Treatment Court in the United States. The first was out of Buffalo, New York. I stand here before you today to tell you that we are, in fact, the #1 Veterans Treatment Court. And that's due in large part to partnerships that we have, including Colonel Reyes. And in fact, Colonel, I'm not sure that I've told you this, that I'm instituting additional training for my attorneys as well as for members of the defense bar. We are inviting them to our office in June for a 1-hour presentation. The supervising judge will also be present. There will be, good evening, Dr. Collins. There will be a continuing legal education hour provided so that we are reaching out to the community, enhancing these relationships that we have, and teaching the attorneys more about our Veterans Treatment Court, the programs that we have that work. Nothing that we do, excuse me, is about politics. It's about public safety. In the last 10 months, I've been to many, many neighborhoods in this city and in this county. Nowhere, whether it's a neighborhood that is black, brown, or white, wants to be a dangerous place. The people who live there want to live in a neighborhood that's safe, a neighborhood where they can go for a walk at night and children are safe to play outside. We will not become a safer place, a safer community, by creating division, which is why I'm here tonight to listen, learn, and to partner with our community to learn how we can better serve our citizens and keep our neighborhoods safe. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for answering our invitation. We are aware that you have a very busy schedule. We had board members that was interested in engaging with you in reference to some of your ideas and perspectives in reference to past concerns in our city. I will now open the floor to our board members for any discussion or statements or questions they would like to present. You will, Colonel Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam State Attorney, thank you very much for appearing tonight and sharing that, articulating on the policy. I'm just a little upset that you stole my thunder because I did want to mention about the great things that your office is doing
Thank you,
in
sir.
the problem-solving courts, and specifically in a much-needed segment of our society, and that is our veterans who get in trouble with the law. And I just wanted to give a shout-out to Katie and to Ellen. They're just doing a wonderful job. But I know it symbolizes and it represents the philosophy and the attitude of the Office of the State Attorney. So as a fellow veteran in the Veterans Treatment Court, I just wanted to share with you, thank you. Thank you for that, for all you do in supporting that, and of course, for supporting us here as our state attorney.
Thank you for your service, Colonel, and it's always a pleasure to see you when I am able to pop into Veterans Treatment Court. And I'll be sure to pass along your thanks to the attorneys.
If you will, Carlos Valdez.
Thank you, State Attorney, for your presentation. I really appreciate the detail of your presentation. You did mention building trust with the law enforcement, and you did mention Veterans Treatment Court as a program you're doing for the community. What other initiative or aspect have you been doing in terms of building relationship with the community? More specifically, our Black and Brown and Hispanic community. Those are the ones that we tend to, forget at times and really are affected. It hits home to me. I'm in the system every single day, seeing our young men and women with gun charges and being victims as well and murders and whatnot. So what are some programs that you have in mind to implement or currently are implementing to work with that population?
Well, I actually, Dr. Collins and I had the opportunity to meet at a violent crime forum. I believe it was late February, if I'm not mistaken. I attend a lot of crime forums, not only with the Sheriff's Office, but also with the Tampa Police Department. And I talk to people and I listen. And that, I think, is probably one of the most important things that I can do is listen and learn. When I first became state attorney, if someone was the victim of a violent crime and lost their life, their next of kin, their family members got a letter, typed up letter in the mail that said, "Dear so-and-so, I'm sorry for your loss." And what I do is I meet with everyone in person. I had a meeting this afternoon. It was on Zoom. We had some out-of-town people. I think that connecting, I want to learn about the person that they lost. I want them to be able to see me and to see my prosecutors, and I want them to understand the criminal justice system. So I think that that is an example of communication and engagement. Everything that we do, whether it is attending the Chiefs Challenge bowling event, I believe that was about 3 weeks ago, my office participated in that. Or it's whether it's participating in an event with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, or whether it's meeting a next of kin in the courtroom when they come for a trial. Everything is about engagement and communication, and that is what I do. As Mr. Chair indicated, my schedule is busy because I'm out a lot. I am attending and I'm at events, and I'm listening and I'm learning. Everywhere I go, there is someone who has had a connection to the criminal justice system. I attended a dinner the other night that was a legal dinner, the Law and Liberty dinner, and I was asked about a crime. I then sent a text message when I sat down at my table to ask one of the attorneys who works with me to look something up. It's about communication and engagement, and that is in all neighborhoods. That is in the Black and brown neighborhoods. It is in the white neighborhoods. Because as I said, everywhere I go, there are people who want to live in safe neighborhoods. I go to most every homicide scene with the prosecutor who is on duty. We have a weekly prosecutor. And I speak with neighbors who are sometimes just standing around outside the periphery, and they say, we want our streets to be safer. We don't want this in our neighborhood. And so I have conversations with them, and I learn and I listen, and I take that back to my office and say, what can we be doing better? I say three things everywhere I go. Tell me what works, tell me what doesn't, and tell me what I can do to fix it. And so I go to learn and to listen and to communicate and engage.
Thank you. And I'll close with this. Please use this platform, the members on this board, to be able to work together. There's a disconnect between the community, the law enforcement, the state attorney's office, and that's part of our role, is to help build that trust between the community and the law enforcement entity here in the city of Tampa. So please, I'm available, and I'm sure other members of this board will make themselves available to make a better Tampa. Thank you.
I'd be honored to do that. Thank you.
Thank you again for honor. I'm sorry, Miss Carolyn Collins. I wasn't sure you was getting my attention or not, but if you will, please.
Yes, thank you so much, and appreciate you attending the community event. Two of us was there together, and we did ask you about our invitation, and you said, okay, yes, I'm going to follow up, and thank you for coming.
Yes, ma'am.
It's important, I think, for us to have that opportunity to communicate with you, as well as the people who watch this that is not in attendance to know it as well. I do know that I missed some of your presentation, so I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If you've already discussed that question and given us your opinion, it's okay. I'll get it in the minutes or from the recording. But I do also know that they had a plethora of community meetings out at the NAACP office, and they had a meeting there where we could not come in. I actually was there, and it was just for you, I think, with the leadership, the president, or the executive committee. I'm not sure. I'm going to ask two questions then, because the other one goes with this one. One is, have you had an opportunity to go before the community meetings, whether it's the, I don't know whether Jiba Bar have community meetings, the NAACP, the Divine Nine. I think it would be great to go before those entities as well, because they too work within the community, and it would give them an opportunity to do the referrals, because that was something, even during the time I was really active, that we did to afford the community the opportunity to do that. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was off. And the other question I wanted to ask, and that was one of the reasons, because the media was saying one thing, and if you've already expressed it, if not, if you can give us, everybody call it Biking While Black, and I don't call it, I'm gonna read it. The racial disparity bicycle stops and the citations that were made by Tampa Police Department some time ago. Mm-hmm. And that there was indication that you were reactivating that. And we did ask the police chief at that time what was her opinion on it. She gave us opinion. She gave us what she thought your opinion, where I said maybe spoke. I would like for you to give us your opinion, so if people approach us, yes, we will have your opinion, and those individuals that are actually viewing this currently or later will hear what your opinion. So those two were interacting with those kind of community groups that hopefully will be in, and not with the executive committees, but with the general public.
I'm going to go to your first question first. There was a meeting, I believe, March 16th or 17th. I could be wrong on that date, with the NAACP. I didn't know about it until the day before, and I already had a previous engagement. I did miss that one. I saw President Lewis at a meeting on Friday morning, and she and I are in communication. We run into each other and we chat, and so she knows that my door is always open to her. She and I have had several meetings, and I've told her that I do look forward to speaking with other groups. The meeting that you're talking about, I didn't make the invitation list for that. That was just President Lewis and one member of her executive team back in August. But she does know that my door is open to her, and I hope that her door is open to me, and I welcome any opportunity. With regard to, I believe you're speaking about the August meeting of the CRB, where then Police Chief O'Connor spoke. And I can assure this board, as I stand here today, there is no reinstitution of any program. Everything that Chief O'Connor said was accurate with regard to her agency. She also, without speaking for me, did express her thoughts as she believed, because she and I had a number of conversations in the 2 or 3 weeks leading up to that, and she in fact was correct. There is no reinstitution of any program or policy.
Okay, and thank you, because that's really, I want to make sure
Yes,
that
ma'am.
whatever was happening there.
Yes, ma'am.
It had been studied immensely, it was ceased, and the police chief had said that they weren't bringing it back, and then they was trying to say a media leaves some things out there that's not accurate, and that's why we thought if we had the opportunity to talk with you, we will know, and then the people in the community that observe the show as well.
Yes, ma'am.
That's not here would know. The only other thing is, whether it's visiting some of the churches like Reverend Bart Banks Church, or whether it's the NAACP general membership meeting, or if it's October general membership meeting, I think oftentimes, sometimes individuals go and they speak, but they speak to the executive committees and the membership is not, they're not allowed to be there and do not know what's going on. So even in the event of the NAACP or any other group, it would be nice if you could speak to the masses if they extend an invitation, because even though I may not be with that group, if it's a public meeting and they allow, then I may want to come in as well to hear and support. So
I'd be
thank
honored
you.
to attend. I'd be honored to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Quite welcome. Any other questions or statements or comments for our attorney?
I
Ms.
just
Irene
want-
Guy.
Thank you. I just want to say thanks for coming and speaking to us. You know, it is always good to hear the words from the source, and that is very helpful to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm glad that our schedules were finally able to align.
Well, thank you, and again, we will continue to monitor your success.
Thank you.
You have the support of the board, and again,
Thank you.
as you have done in the past, please feel free to reach out to any of the board members to assist you with your plan moving forward.
Thank you. My door is always open as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
We will now continue with the scheduled agenda under item 4, public comment. If you will, Colonel Reyes, if you can bless us with the public comment meeting guidelines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Please silence all electronic devices. The duties and responsibilities of the Citizens Review Board are to review completed department investigations involving use of force and cases of importance and interest to the community or the city, determine whether the disposition of reviewed cases was consistent with department policies and procedures, review matters of importance or interest and make recommendations regarding the handling of these matters, determine whether any revisions or additions to department policy and procedures are appropriate in reviewing matters of or importance or interest, and report findings and recommendations to the mayor and chief of police. Cases that are brought before the Citizens Review Board are closed internal affairs cases that have been investigated and brought before the police chief for disposition. It is the Citizens Review Board's job to review the cases and render an opinion as to whether the investigation was done according to department policies and procedures. The Citizens Review Board members are provided the investigative files in advance of the meeting. The Citizens Review Board will hear from the department whenever matters of importance or interest are requested for review by the board or the department. The coordinator for the board is Captain Patrick Mesmer. Any person who wishes to make a complaint concerning a matter which may be considered by the Professional Standards Bureau should see Captain Mesmer for information on how to file a complaint. And finally, the board should not discuss matters where the city or the department may likely be a party in litigation. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Colonel Reyes. If you will, those who wish to engage in our public comment portion of this meeting, if you will, if you can start a line here right at that green chair. The first in line, if you will, go ahead and approach the podium. Please state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
So, I'm Philip Freund, and my address is written on the sign-in sheet. and I am speaking here once again on the case of Kelsey Storemski, asking if it'd be possible for the case to be pushed forward from the original date, which I believe is October 24th, to something closer in the upcoming months. And I just simply believe that this matter is of importance to the community, and people have come out over the past few months and spoken on the topic and wanting to see the case reviewed by a board, and that's it.
Thank you. If you will, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3
Thank you.
minutes.
My name is Talabuddin Abdullah. My address is 112 East Andrews Street. I'm here to, I guess, to complain about individual automotive shop who's using the mechanics liens, auto mechanics liens to steal individual cars. And they run, I don't know, 15 or 20 of them through the court system almost on a monthly basis. And I'm a victim of this particular shop. They closed the shop down, and on Cross Creek Road, they opened it up in a different name, and it took us almost a year to track them down. They're making restitution right now, but they're still stealing people's cars. So I got some relief, but they're still harming other people. And I think someone needs to do something about it to be able to shut them down. And I have all the information, if you, whatever information you need, I have all the information that we have did to research and investigate the individual who's perpetrating these crimes.
Thank you. If you like, you can remain seated. We do have on the agenda staff and board response to public comment. There may be individuals that may have questions or may not.
Okay, thank you.
Any other participant would like to participate in the public comment portion of this meeting? Please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and leave your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Laura Rodriguez. I'm actually not going to state my address because I'm currently getting doxxed online. I'm here in support of Kelsey Storemski. Just kind of wondering why it was pushed so far back. She's been consistently asking that question. She couldn't make it out tonight. She lives outside of the city, but we'd kind of like some answers to that. Again, this happened more than 3 years ago, and just to push it back 7 months is just kind of like a slap in the face. She's really distraught by it, having personal conversations with her often about it. She just feels like the city still isn't hearing her. And then also I'd like to take this time to say that I know that, at least I heard that Miss Susie Lopez was here, and she said, I talk to the people and I listen. I'm here to say that is not true. She has had many calls to her office to ask that the charges on myself and 4 others be dropped. I stand before you out on bail facing 10 years after I was beat up by USFPD for attending a protest, something that I've done for years. It doesn't have to do with TPD, but that case does fall within her jurisdiction, and a lot of people who have protested TPD in the past have had their charges dropped because of that, because they were just false charges, and I'm here to say that is also a false charge, and she's trying to go through with that. So I would say listen to her words, but very much put an asterisk by it and don't believe 100% of what you say, or what she says. And yeah, so I would just ask you to review the Storemski case. I was supposed to print out her statement again and the pictures that she sent to us that showed that she had been beaten up and bruised, bruises all on her face, her body, her arms. But I guess I will get that to you at a later date and time. Just ran out of work, didn't have enough time to stop at the library to do some printouts. But thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Thank you. If you will, please approach the podium. Please state your name and address for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Sandra Zickery. My address is in Riverview. I believe it's a shame that we have a review board that doesn't know a citizen's constitutional rights and the standard of procedures that govern the police, and a board that presents falsehood to the general public. I gave the sworn affidavits to the Department of Health in April of 2023, in which they stated, I was able to review the documents and they seemed sufficient to get this reviewed, and instructed me to file a complaint. They also informed that the medical battery and forgery is within the jurisdiction of the police because it is still criminal. The CRB cannot defer these issues elsewhere. In one of their letters, they state a police report had been filed about the medical battery and the forgery that the claimant alleges, so the patient's complaint will be investigated by at least one other agency. Under common law, a surgeon who performs an operation without a patient's consent is considered assault. And case law also supports where a doctor has been criminally charged, or those in which doctors issue prescriptions to patients and dosages that they know or should know could be dangerous. I didn't consent to the anesthesia. They held me down, threatened me, and do it. And then the nurses forged the consent forms and overdosed me with anesthesia. Under Florida Statute 409.920, which is the Medicaid fraud statute, law enforcement do have a duty to investigate Medicaid fraud, as well as alleged abuse and neglect of patients. In April, the cops tell me to come file additional charges on behalf of myself and my child in the Medicaid fraud, bring the evidence, speak to the department about investigation because there were no formal investigation. They reopened the report, scanned the evidence, closed it, then destroyed the evidence I gave them with the excuse I previously provided to them, and didn't document the allegations of my child. I had no contact with the police at the end of 2021 or 2022, in which I obtained that evidence. These cops have lied to the Attorney General about the affidavits. They lie in their reports, and they're slandering my case on the media. I met with the state's office last month. They took the police reports, assuming that the evidence was scanned so they could see the evidence and the complaints that I had, and now the cops destroyed the evidence, withhold material facts that would lead to prosecution, tampered with evidence, and obstructed justice.
If you will, Sandra, you can draw to a conclusion. You exceeded your 3 minutes.
Oh, it's 15 seconds, but an attorney has asked TPD to call them and assist. The mayor and the chief and DA all promised a meeting with me, and at this point, the government is failing the community, and their failure to intervene sufficiently is a public threat.
Thank you, Ms. Sandra.
So
You can be
it's a
seated.
pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. I will now ask our meeting clerk, have there been any recorded comments received for this meeting?
No recorded comments.
I will now ask if we've received any written comments for this particular meeting.
No written comments received.
That will conclude the public comment portion of our meeting. We will now continue to item 6, staff and board response to public comment. I will now open up the floor to our board members if they wish to engage in any of the commentary we received tonight, starting with Mr. Carlos Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Mr. Mike. I know back in March, you had mentioned the case of Kelsey to be heard in October. Was there an explanation as to why we're waiting these 7 months? I know we review cases that are closed. Is this case still open so that we can have more understanding and clarity, please?
It's my understanding the complaint period of time, and again, I don't want to get into all of it because at this point I'm not the one with all the information on this, but it's my understanding that the time period for filing the complaint had passed when it came in, so we do not have any authority to actually open a complaint in this situation. So there was no actual investigation. A call did come in about it, and at which point it was looked into and it was determined that the time period had gone, and so they closed the investigation. So at this point, there is no open investigation. There couldn't have been an open investigation based on the fact that time period had ran. The reason we're asking for October is because at this point, we don't believe there's a reason to bring this matter to the board. And October is, what it appears to us is that this is going to potentially put the city in a liability type situation. This appears possibly to be appearance for some sort of lawsuit, so we're letting the 4-year period of time lapse so that we're not just trying to walk into a lawsuit. So we think that would be a fair and appropriate response. We'll be happy to bring the facts of the case and before the board. We just don't think we need to do it before the statute of limitations period is run.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. If you will, Miss Irene Guy.
I'm going to say what I said many times before. This board is not an investigative board. This is a review board. We review cases that have been closed. We do not investigate cases. None of us are investigators up here. But we do review them when they're closed, and if we have questions regarding the outcome of those cases, those are answered. But it always astounds me that everybody wants us to investigate. It's out of my lane. I'm not an investigator. I believe when the chair reads the verbiage regarding people speaking, it's in there. This is not an investigative board. So I just want to put that on the record so that I've got it out of my system. Thank you very much, Chip.
Quite welcome. Any other questions or comments? If you will, Mr. Lincoln Tamayo.
I have a question for Mr. Abdullah.
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah, have you filed a complaint with the police department?
Yes, sir. They did the investigation and they charged the individual.
Oh, so he has been charged?
They charged the individual. The individual took a plea and they closed the case, but the restitution, it was two issues. It was $20,000 theft and $80,000 car. Well, they made him pay back restitution for the car, for the money, but they didn't deal with the car. And so the case is technically, according to what you're saying, the case is closed, but it was not closed properly because he's riding around in the car as we speak today.
And the finding and so the case has gone to trial.
No, well, he took a plea, so I don't know the name of the plea. They took a plea that he don't have to plead. He paid a restitution and he gets off. I don't know. Don't ask me the terminology, but he don't plead guilty or innocent.
Right.
He just pay the fine. If he don't pay the fine, then he has to go back to trial.
And he's paid the fine?
No, he's paying on a monthly basis now.
Got it. But he's also supposed to give restitution in the return of the vehicle.
That's correct, but he didn't give the car. He didn't have him give him the car. He's driving the car. He told the state attorney that he sold the car. We took a picture just yesterday that he's still riding around in the car. So, but this is not just about me. This is, when I say I got a book full of theft, I have a book full of theft where he has, he stole tires and he wrote a bad check and he closed his shop down. A handicapped person went to have their van repaired. He stole that car, but he does it through the mechanics lien process, which is a very gray area, and he steals these vehicles. And every single document in here that a car that was stolen, all of the owners have the same signature. So he forged every single document in here. So this is an ongoing problem.
Mr. Abdullah, I would assume, can you file another complaint now with the police department, knowing and showing them evidence?
Well, I don't know if I can or not. That's why I was speaking to the state's attorney before she left to see what the process is, because like I say, there's a lot of people being harmed right now as we speak.
I would pursue that further with the state attorney,
Yeah.
absolutely. And this auto shop was in the city of Tampa?
Yes, yes, it is.
And still is. It was first at Cross Creek Road?
It was at Cross Creek, and then after he closed down after all the fraud that he did, he opened up in his wife name another company.
And still in the
in his
city.
right. So now he's over here and doing the same thing.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. If you will, Dr. Collins?
Yeah, I actually wanted to, that's the, just about all my questions was asked with one exception.
Yes, ma'am.
And it might take our staff to answer this question with you. Is this a problem that could be filed through CRB, or should it stay with the state attorney, particularly since it may not involve TPD?
Well,
That's what I'm
I
trying
think
to
the
say.
police, what needs to be done is, someone needs to take these documents that we have, and it's all public record, because that's how we found them, and just investigate them and see, but we have, he's doing it in plain sight. Like I say, theft in plain sight, this is theft in plain sight.
Well, our only interest would be to the greater importance of the community.
That's
If
what-
this
yeah.
particular business is still in operation, and if what this gentleman states is true, and taking advantage of those that are physically challenged and things of that nature, what we can do is shine light on this particular operation and share it with the powers to be to ensure that other members of our public or citizens don't get affected by this particular
Correct.
scam. But we have to take a look at the investigation before we hold anyone accountable or anything of that nature. But if you will, Ms. Kamaria.
Kamaria Pettisnako from the legal department. Mr. Chair, if the gentleman has information regarding ongoing or continued crimes, as he previously stated, and as you all observed, he was able to speak with the state attorney. I believe he has her card. He should follow up with the state attorney to report those crimes and whatever district this business is located in order to report the new allegations or the previous allegations that were not resolved as a result of the case where he is the victim. But there are some resources for him to utilize in order to address the ongoing criminal activities. He definitely should report those activities, or the other people are victimized, they should report those as well.
Thank you.
And then,
If you will, Dr. Collins.
so that mean that there would be no point at this time in him filing, and I'm getting this for clarity for me, this is not, for you, because I think it's clear what you probably need to do. I have a problem with people that are out there in the community that's taking advantage of people because they're doing it in so many areas and they know they can get away with it. So I don't want to leave that message with individuals who are watching the show so it don't do any good because they're going to get away with it. No,
Correct.
he's going to go to the state attorney. But if for some reason that this case was brought before CRB, it has no reason because it does not involve something that was going wrong with TPD. It's a business. Is that correct?
That is
And I'm
correct.
just trying to make sure that I'm clear and the people in the community to hear it so folks won't call us and ask, well, why y'all didn't do anything? And it's because it's not TPD, but a crime is being submitted and let it go through the right channels.
Correct.
Let me just add something. What needs to be, and this is just me talking, the police department needs to look into it further. What happened was they took my information, took it to the state attorney, filed charges, 3 charges against him, but they didn't follow through with all of the other victims that are out there on it. So someone in the police department, detective, whoever, should look into it because it's an unresolved situation. Like I said, it's ongoing as we speak. And not in addition to just stealing cars. If you take your car to that particular vendor, you can go online and Google it. All people, you pay for your car to be repaired. You come back, your car is not repaired. He say your car repaired. You have an argument with him. You take it to another dealer. The dealer say he never touched it, but he never gives the people back their money. And I got cases of this.
Okay, thank you, sir. That will conclude item 6. We'll continue with the agenda with item
Mr.
All
Chair,
right, if you will, Carlos
we need to
Valdez.
do the approval of the minutes.
We have not approved the minutes, really. I apologize. Okay, we will continue with item 4, approval of the minutes from the meeting of March 28th, 2023. Are there any questions or provisions? Hearing none, I would need a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting of March 28th, 2020. Excuse me, April,
Hey, okay.
April 28th,
April 20,
2023.
is it, no, 25th.
April 25th, okay, apologies. For the meeting of April 25th, 2023, I would need a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting of April 25th, 2023.
Second.
Ari Guy has made a motion to approve the minutes of April 25th, 2023. Board Member Carlos Valdez has seconded the motion of the meeting minutes of April 25th, 2023. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll continue with the vote. All those in favor, please show by raise of hand. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, and apologies for the discrepancies in the dates.
Things that,
Thank you. We'll now continue with the agenda, and thank you, Carlos Valdez, bringing that to my attention. We'll now continue with the agenda. Let me ensure we're now at item 7, items to be reviewed. Tonight, we are reviewing case number 22F-015, City Personnel Manual B1.2, Discriminatory Conduct Sustained, SOP 536, Professional Responsibility Sustained, MOR 1005, Standard of Conduct Sustained, MOR 1210, Courtesy to the Public Sustained, SOP 609.9, Body Worn Camera Equipment Sustained. If we will, we have a member of TPD to please present the case.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Detective Jason DeGagnon with Tampa Police Department Internal Affairs Bureau. Tonight, I'm going to be discussing Internal Affairs Case 22F-015. This investigation is involving Officer Randall Chafin. On November 26, 2022, at approximately 21:04 hours, Officer Chafin and Officer D. Furby responded to a residence on West Iowa Street in reference to a domestic-related call for service. While conducting the investigation, the male half began to argue with the officers about being on his property. Once the officers determined that the domestic issue was civil in nature, Officer Chafin continued to argue with the intoxicated male subject. The male subject asked several times to speak to Officer Chafin's supervisor, to which Officer Chafin declined. During the lengthy argument, Officer Chafin was unprofessional and used explicit language. Officer Chafin did call the male subject a derogatory slur, referring to his sexual orientation. The male subject asked several more times to speak to Officer Chafin's supervisor, at which time he still declined. It was only until Officer Furby advised that he would call their supervisor that Officer Chafin decided to do it himself. Officer Chafin did call his supervisor and advised him of the events that transpired. After the conversation, Officer Chafin deactivated his body-worn camera and then apologized to the subject. This exchange was captured on Officer Furby's body-worn camera. Officer Chafin's supervisors arrived on scene. They took the complaint, notified their chain of command, and in turn, this became a formal investigation. Officer Chafin was placed on administrative duty on November 28, 2022, during this formal investigation. He was forced to surrender his badge, firearm, and police vehicle. In conclusion, all of the allegations that that Mr. Rashid mentioned were all sustained. Officer Chafin did retire from the Tampa Police Department on April 22nd, 2023, prior to any discipline being administered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will now open the floor to the board for any questions or statements. If you will, Colonel Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. A couple questions. This is pretty disturbing reading this. It was, how many wrong things can we pick out of the scenario? It was almost as if we were taking an exam and trying to pick it all out. But I guess, to me, with so many things happening in it, one of the questions I had was, is there a department policy or procedure for a policeman who is experiencing any personal or family crisis of any nature to not only inform the chain of command, but then are there any procedures by which the chain of command, is there any criteria by which the chain of command will then look at that situation and then determine whether or not that policeman is fit for duty for that specific shift? That's my first question.
We have an EAP, an early intervention program for our officers if they're experiencing any type of trauma in their life or anything going on. We do have that. If you're asking specifically for this one, he did go and assist or ask for the assistance of an EAP, but it was subsequent to this event. It wasn't prior to this.
Okay. My next question is based off of what I believe to have been contained in Officer Furby's statement, where I believe he mentioned that there was a history with this family that they were going to. Specifically, I think the father of the actual complainant, Mr. Charette. I'm not sure if I'm saying that name correctly. I guess the question I have on that, reading that, was knowing that, what if any procedures or policies or discretionary criteria does the chain of command have when they see that as a potential explosive type situation, and what do they have at their availability in mitigating that situation?
I guess I'm confused by the question, Colonel. So knowing the subjects, they're being familiar with the subject's home and family that they're going to?
Yeah, I believe I read in the statement that it was mentioned that they knew the family, this domestic situation.
Yes.
They knew of the family. This family was known to the police, and specifically the father, not the complainant, Mr. Charette, who was intoxicated, but the father. And so I think there was a comment, if I'm not mistaken, in the statement where the police officer said, it's the father, so like the father or like the son, or something to that, trying to make that kind of connection.
Oh, okay. As far as the connection, yeah. So I'm sorry again. I guess I'm just kind of confused on what the question. I want to try to answer that for you the best that I can.
Yeah, I'm probably not being very clear on my question. I guess what I'm saying is these are like indicators and warnings. These are like tipping. This is tipping criteria. Not something you can like put your finger on, but when you have little things like little indicators like that pop up, to me, it was an indicator. If I were that policeman or receiving that call and then that came up on the net, that would tell me, okay, we got a potentially explosive situation here. And the reason why I mention that to you is when you look at the perfect storm with the domestic situation in which the husband and wife were seriously intoxicated, this thing that I just mentioned about the history of this family, the police officer going through a personal family crisis, and then of course is resulting unprofessional behavior, which was not helped by the unprofessional behavior and uncivil behavior of Mr. Charette itself. I guess it really goes back to my first question. When you look at all of those things that are happening, it was the beginning and the start of a perfect storm. I'm trying to put myself in the place of the chain of command, of the supervisor that's, you know, watching this and listening to all this in real time. I just want to know, policies and procedures wise, what is it that the chain of command has, your supervisory management, to when they see these type of tipping criteria that are popping up, what's the standard procedures? What are the mitigating things that they can do so they could have possibly avoided this type of situation?
So as far as the mental health and overall well-being of that officer,
That's one aspect,
so
yes.
that one aspect, of course, our supervisors need to touch base, and they do supervise our officers very well, and they check on their well-being on a daily basis. So obviously, our job can be very stressful. When it comes to responding to calls, you know, it's very common for us to go to the same address, you know, several times, especially if you work a certain zone. It's common for us to deal with certain individuals, you know, over the course of our career. It's not uncommon at all. You know, of course, when you're working this job, you know, 40 hours a week and you're on the street, you get to know the individuals that you are policing. So there's really no way to determine whether, you know, something, and just because his father, you know, there was problems with his father in the past, there's no way that we can, you know, say that, okay, that the son's going to be an issue now. So I hope that answers your question, sir.
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
As you will, Mr. Tamayo.
Detective, how many years had Officer Chafin served with DPD?
I believe it was under 10, but I think he bought some time back. I don't know the exact number, sir.
Okay, but close to 10 years?
Close to, yes, sir.
And had there been any similar complaints against Officer Chafin?
No, nothing like that. I did run his history, and his history, as far as discipline, dealt with attentiveness to duty and operation of police vehicles, which is, you know, at-fault traffic crashes, but nothing to this magnitude.
Okay, and so nothing even remotely similar to this?
No, sir.
This was just a really, really bad evening for him?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Detective. Oh, would you be able to say to us what would have probably happened as far as a consequence to Officer Chafin?
It would have probably been termination. That was the recommendation by staff, termination.
Okay.
The city has there's no room there for any type of discriminatory conduct.
Okay, thank you.
If you will, Mr. Engendella.
I just, maybe like for a point of clarity, the complaint came from the chief, correct? This wasn't from the couple that they were trying to help through their domestic situation?
Well, it was ordered by the chief. However, the complainant in this case, the chief, but the gentleman that was out there did make the complaint to that officer's supervision, and then it ultimately went up the chain.
Okay,
and became formal.
That's
Yeah.
what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Collins?
The only thing, and I didn't ask much on this because he retired, I mean, he left the force, but how long, because that looked like it went on for a while, and they asked him to leave the property, and he decided not to leave the property. And I remember seeing a 1 a.m. and something else. Hopefully he would have left and he would still maybe be with the force, because the words that he said and the arguments that he got in and start telling them about, you know, I make more than you, those kind of things. And then with his brother apparently having just died that day, I did have some sympathy for him, but I agree with you guys with the, you know, the discriminatory words that he made sexually and otherwise. But was he the only one? I remember somebody told him to go, and I think he went and got in the car. Even with other officers, if we looked at it differently and you want an officer to kind of say to an officer, hey, man, cool it, you know, go get in the car? Are they inclined to also try to do that and maybe be a little bit more encouraging, if not forceful, to get them to just leave? Because when he got into it with them, he was kind of really down and dirty.
Right, no, and I get that, and we do practice de-escalation tactics. You know, there was no indication that he was going to bring it to the level that which he did. At any time, the officer that was with him could have stepped in. However, again, he didn't know it was going to get as bad as it did. There's no doubt about that.
And finally, if an officer like this go off, get himself corrected, if he came back, would he be at some point down the road rehireable? Or will this, and I don't know if there's a standard that's set up in the Human Resource Division that look at things like that?
I would say no.
Thank you.
My concern, and I want to know more about this EAP program, but my question is, the EAP program, that's a volunteer program an officer can take advantage of if they feel that they need additional assistance?
Absolutely. Yes.
And you mentioned earlier that the supervisor does check on his officers on a routine basis. And if that supervisor is able to identify there may be something going on in the background or may not, is there a policy or is there a routine evaluation that an officer goes through, whether it's physical or mental, for the department to make a decision if this particular officer is fit to serve the community during any particular time frame, or are we waiting for the officer's personal discretion?
No, absolutely, we can do that.
But is it a routine evaluation? Is there a standard?
It's an individual basis. It would depend on that supervisor and what the supervisor saw. If there were any indicators that the officer needed any type of EAP or assistance in mental health, that would be up to that supervisor to identify that and then send that officer to the EAP and the proper channels.
And briefly, can you share a little bit more about the EAP program and how does it assist officers?
Well, we have mental health counselors available for officers. The city does provide that, of course, free of charge. If an officer is experiencing anything, any type of personal problems, whether it be marital, financial, anything like that, the city does provide that at no cost to the officers.
And this EAP program, if an officer does take advantage of that particular program, is it in the health category where this information is kept to an individual basis, or would this be something shared in their jacket, or how would this particular program reflect light in this person's career down the road?
Well, it would depend, depends on the actual issue that the officer is having, depending on if it's medical or if it violates any type of HIPAA laws or anything like that. That really, but I hope that answers your question, Mr. Rashid.
Yes. Are you with Mr. Carlo Valdez?
The incident happened on November 26th, and the investigation started on the 28th. Do we know the exact date that this officer resigned?
That he resigned, yes, it was April. I think I said it. Hold on, sorry, I'm sorry. April 22nd of 2023.
So from November to April 22nd, we were still under investigation as it relates to this case, and the recommendation was probably going to be termination. Why would it take so long to determine termination, if that's the route that we're going, for a case like this of this magnitude? I mean, I just feel like there was a time gap in that.
Well, we have 180 days statutorily to conduct these investigations. And when you're conducting an investigation where someone is going to possibly be fired, then you want to be as thorough as possible. So again, the time period is allowed statutorily, and again, the investigation was done. There was a lot of interviews to do, there was a lot of transcripts, and again, we did not want to make any mistakes. We wanted to get everything right, so it does take time to do these investigations.
I would be interested to see a statistics data as it relates to cases, how many of our officers are resigning before determination, or the determination of the consequence is implemented, compared to the ones that are actually receiving the discipline. So is that data fairly available that can be presented to us?
Are you asking if you can have data in reference to officers that resign under investigation?
Yes, sir.
I believe we can find that data. Are you making a motion?
Sure. I would like to make a motion to see how frequently our officers resigning. And I bring this up because I do see a lot of the cases that are coming up to us. The end result is that the officer resigned. So I'm curious to see what that looks like, if that's a trend throughout the department, or it's just something that is just happening. So I'll make a motion to have the TPD bring back to us resignation data as it relates to cases that are under investigation.
Mr. Valdez has a motion on the floor in reference to TPD presenting the board with data in reference to officers resigning before discipline of a disposition.
Correct.
Can I add something to that or restate it? Can we also know if any of those officers, after they resign, are employed as law enforcement officers elsewhere, as opposed to having their record marked, they resign and go work somewhere else? I don't know if you guys have access to where other people are gonna go after that, but.
I personally don't know where if we would have access to that, because I know that sometimes other agencies, as far as other states, won't even call us for any of the information if they hired some of our officers.
Okay.
So,
I didn't know if there's like a database, like where your license goes or something.
I don't know of any. I could look into that
That'd be awesome.
for you, Devin. Yeah.
Well, do you accept, Mr. Valdez, do you accept the modification of the motion?
It was nice to hear it, but given the severity that, the complex that we don't have those resources, we'll leave it as is.
Okay, I'm good with that.
And what kind of time period are you looking at?
Oh, within the
Timeline.
past year, we can do a whole calendar year so that we can.
Okay.
Say 2022.
So the motion on the floor, again, is for Tampa Police Department to return data to the board in reference to officers that received discipline and was able to resign before disposition. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Dr. Carolyn Collins has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? We'll now continue with the vote. All those in favor, please show by raise of hand. Any opposed, please show by raise of hand. That motion passes. Thank you. And if you will, Detective, if you can remain at the podium, I believe there's one or two more questions. Dr. Collins.
Mine was simply it's just data collection that would be good to know, but I wouldn't want to say, when you said what you want and how soon, you were saying how far, to take a look. I'm saying it doesn't need to come back very soon, because we understand how busy you guys and, got work to do. So it's not like bring this back next month. It's just that if we could get something like that within a period of time, it might be 3 months or whatever, 4 months. But it'll be just good to kind of see that, because we did have a number of cases here lately where individuals resigned and we were asking questions, do they still get their retirement and things like that. So that would kind of be good. On the other hand, we had another situation where someone did not resign. So it would be good to kind of just know what it looked like. But I don't want you to feel like it's a do-it-tomorrow situation.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
You're right.
I-
Make that a motion. Okay.
I did have some concern with the BWC, and from the cases I pulled, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but there is starting to ditto Carlos Valdez concern of a trend of officers manipulating the BWC, disengaging the BWC to manipulate accountability and transparency as they seem fit. My question is, what model of BWC are we currently using, and how long we've been using this particular model, and are we looking to upgrade this technology? And in addition, are we reinforcing the discipline of such actions of importance if this equipment is manipulated as a deterrent method?
We're using the Axon. Unfortunately, I don't have all the information that you're looking for on that, but we can bring that information back at a later date.
We had several presentations on BWC, obviously. I just want to, I'd like to take a look and see, has it been upgraded at all, as far as technology-wise, software-wise, anything of that nature, and also to ensure that we're encouraging the discipline action and the importance of what BWCs serve, not only from a transparency level, but also for safety, also for investigators' purposes and things of that nature. Just want to ensure that this type of behavior is not adopted in the locker room, that they have this particular tool where they can use it to their discretion. It is law enforcement equipment, and we expect them to use that equipment as if it's a handgun or a taser and things of that nature.
Yep, absolutely, and we take the use of the body-worn cameras very seriously. As I think Captain Mesmer has mentioned in the past, we do have a detective that specifically just audits the body cam footage. She spends all of her days looking at each of the officers' body cams, making sure that it's not in sleep mode, making sure that it's not being manipulated in any way and everyone's using it correctly.
If you will, Reverend Banks.
Just a simple question. Negative behavior like this that take place, is there a way that the department allow the agency at large to know that this type of behavior is not tolerated, or is it privately kept in the file of the individual?
As far as, I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. It's all public record, of course. Can you repeat the question for me? I'm sorry.
Yes, public record, but do you use this as an example of negative behavior that we don't want to see throughout the department? I mean, is it at some point discussed with the officers in general, or?
Oh, it's very well known.
Okay.
It's very well known that any type of conduct like this is not tolerated by the city or the department.
Okay.
And I would encourage, I know that when we received our police academy training, and we were welcomed for various roll calls within the department, and some of this material is being briefed in roll calls. So if members want to participate in those roll calls, you can always reach out to TPD. They'd love to have us present as well. And if you are able to do so, please bring that material back to the board and share what your thoughts are. But I sat in some of the roll calls, and some of those things are being engaged in that particular setting, in that meeting before officers hit the field. If you will, Colonel Reyes.
Thank you. I want to go back to the mental health piece, a couple questions on that. So just so that I understand for clarification. So this is a program that, I'll give a scenario, in the discretion of a supervisor. If a supervisor feels that one of his or her police officers under his or her charge is acting in a certain way or in need of mental health services, then it's the discretion of that supervisor to avail that service to the police officer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Otherwise, if that supervisor doesn't get any indications or warnings of any kind of otherwise abnormal behavior or anything, it's really, or my question is it then a volunteer program
Yes.
from that police officer to avail him or herself to it?
Yes, it'd be voluntary on behalf of that police officer. If they had an issue, they can go to their supervisor and say, I need EAP. And the supervisor would direct them into the proper channel.
So the only safeguard to catching something potentially not good on a police officer is if a supervisor actually sees it. Because in the case of a police officer that may be going through internal issues but not saying anything, there's no other way to.
Well, a peer can also, if they see any indicators of any issues, they can go to the supervision and alert them to be on guard and
Okay.
then let them, yeah.
And then the last question is, are there any mandatory scheduled quarterly, yearly type EAP type trainings or sessions that's required by policy for police officers?
Well, by policy, so any type of use of forces, if there's a certain level of use of forces, then we actually check to see if the officers need any EAP. I think we've mentioned this in the past. If officer has a certain amount of a higher level of use of force, drawing the firearm, things like that, we make sure, okay, hey, is there anything going on? Everything good? And their supervisor is forced to write a letter to make sure, okay, nothing's going on. This officer just is actually working in a high crime area and very proactive in police work.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
You're welcome.
If you will, Carlos Valdez.
To add to that, what I'm hearing is that the EAP program is not accessible to our officers, like voluntarily, or has to be assigned to a proper chain of command to go to a supervisor?
No, voluntarily. So if an officer is having issues, they can go to the city and the city will provide them help, assistance.
Got it. But
And
do they
point them in
have
the right
to-
direction.
They have to go through a supervisor, or can they just call?
They can call
whether
it,
it's
they
chief-
can call
okay.
it, yeah.
Thank you.
The
Thank you for
coordinator
clarification.
themselves, yeah, sorry for the confusion.
I was about to ask the same question, so my question was, I just wanted to make sure that there were more than one way. I could do it, my direct, so whoever my direct report could do it, or one of my coworkers who saw it and suggested or whatever. The EAPs that I'm familiar with, it's there for, because it's an employee assistance program. So they should be able to reach it themselves as well. So that was my question.
If you will, Ms.
I'm
Ms.
sorry,
Guy.
I might, but-
And all of the EAPs I've ever been involved with are confidential as well. Normally, employees, in this case officers, would contact the EAP telephone number usually, and it would be confidential, so they wouldn't have to worry. I don't know yours is set up that way, but generally speaking, they are set up that way. So they're usually confidential, and they do that so that people will use them and to help them. So I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Good point, Mr. Chair,
If you will.
on Mental Health Week.
Thank you, Detective.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. The chair is now open to a motion on whether we concur or not concur or even unable to reach determination regarding the disposition of the case and its findings of case number 22F-015.
Move to concur.
Second.
Board member,
Move to concur on all four sustained.
all four sustained.
Thank you.
Board member Irene Guy has made a motion to concur with all four being sustained. Dr. Carolyn Collins has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? We'll now continue with the vote. All those in favor, please show by raise of hand. Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. We'll now continue with item 9, CRB staff reports and business. We had concerns in reference to, so we had a discussion in previous meetings in reference to how citizens were able to make complaints it was brought to our attention that citizens can now make complaints through the CRB website. With that information being held, there was board members that requested on more information on the operations of that TPD CRB website, its operations and things of that nature. If you will, Ms. Kamaria Pettis-Mackle.
Good evening, Board. Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the Legal Department. I wanted to just walk through the website for, so the members of the public will know how to get first to the Citizens Review Board page and then also how to make a complaint. So this is Tampa Gov, and this is, I'm going to be visually showing you how to get to the different links on the website. So this is tampa.gov/police. And if you scroll down, you'll see these tabs on the Tampa Police website. If you click on the transparency page, and then you'll see different options on the transparency page. You'll also see a link to the Citizens Review Board. And let me know if I'm going too fast. And then, as you can see, this initial page is the Citizens Review Board page. And this page has been updated. The photograph was different. There was a different photograph on this page, but this photograph has been updated. And if you see here on, again, this is still on the tampa.gov website, and this is specifically on the Citizens Review Board page. This is the link that provides the information on how to file a complaint. So if you click on that, this provides the members of the public the different ways in order to file a complaint, whether it's in person, by mail, online, or by phone. So the initial page, and I'll go back to it one more time, this initial information right here, file a complaint, was not on the page. So again, members of the public may have had to click on various links, but we've simplified it. We've worked with our IT department just to further clarify how to simply file a complaint by clicking on that Tampa Police Department link, and it provides the information on how to file a complaint, whether it's, again, in person, by mail, online, or by phone.
Can you click on the link online? Like, where can you take us?
And this is the information that has to be filled out.
And this, once this is filled out, this will go to?
Yeah, professional standards. But again, this is just one way. I showed you the previous page on how there's multiple ways.
No,
but
absolutely. I just want to know, behind the scenes, when you send an email, you send out an inquiry online, where is it going to? Obviously, you go to the district, there's somebody there to help you.
It says, use this service to make a complaint to the Professional Standards Bureau against a member of the Tampa Police Department.
I'll go back.
It does say on there to put your phone number so an investigator can contact you, so.
Now that by phone option, if one wanted to make a complaint by phone by just reaching out to the Professional Standards Bureau directly, is that an automated recorded service, or is that a live person? Is that something you just kind of just call and state your complaint?
It's live.
It's live. Okay,
Go
great.
back up slowly, up to the top. And they still can go to District 1, 2, or 3.
Correct.
thank you. I think this is exactly what we were asking for. So thank you very much for doing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Kamara Pettis. Michael, any other questions or statements of concerns from Ms. Michael? Okay.
I do have one other item, and I want to personally thank Mr. Chair and Vice Chair for coming to City Council to provide City Council members information regarding the annual report. But we did receive a signed affidavit or a signed documentation from the City Council members confirming that they did review and receive the annual report. If I could just, if a board member can make a motion to receive and file the attestation from the City Council members, I'd appreciate that.
I'll make a motion that, since they did a great job, and you did too, I make a motion that we receive the attestation from the City Council in receipt of our annual report.
Second.
Dr. Collins had made a motion in reference to receiving the filed attestation from City Council. Colonel Reyes has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please show by raising hand. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
And if I might, Mr. Chair.
And Dr. Collins?
Just wanted to very quickly say thank you to our chair and vice chair, represented us very well at the meeting, and in addition to that, very positive comments, and thanks to the staff for the report. It was indicated by specifically by one of the councilmen how easy reading it was, and he was able to really flow through it and actually see what we were doing, and was quite grateful. So, ditto, great work.
Thanks.
Chair and vice chair, ditto, staff, great work.
Thank you.
And ditto board for your presence.
We'll continue with the agenda. The only item that's placed on the agenda for continuation is the case matter of Kelsey Sturmiski, which we have received several public comment on. This particular case was presented to the board, and the board has established it onto the agenda, and it will be heard or reviewed in the presentation of October 24th, 2023. So those that have interest in that particular case, it is on the schedule in October. I heard commentary today. Obviously, you like this case to be heard yesterday, but there's things on the agenda, and we placed it on the agenda, and in the near future, we will shine light on that particular case and move forward with that. Continue with the agenda for announcements and new business. The next scheduled meeting is for June 27, 2023 here at Old City Hall, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, 3rd floor, Tampa, Florida 33602 at the regular scheduled time of 6 p.m. I encourage board members, if you're unable to be present, please notify our meeting clerk, Ms. Tanya Wilcox, in 48 hours in advance to ensure voting for. Before I adjourn this meeting, I would like to give any of our board members the opportunity to make any statements or concerns at this time. Hearing none.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry. You will, Mr. Valdez.
I just want to throw out to the board, last month we concluded our tour out in the community with having our meetings in the districts. I want to see how we can talk about that, not today, but another night, about that process and moving forward, if that's the best way for us to get involved with the community and have the community participate. Seeing that we had low turnout in all of the meetings, it takes a lot on the city staff to transport cameras and whatnot. So I want to see if we can start thinking for later dates to discuss how we can properly execute a community engagement piece to the work that we're doing.
Yes, if you will, Ms. Kamaria Pettis-Malcolm.
Kamaria Pettis-Malcolm from the City Attorney's Office. Mr. Valdez, the community meetings that took place this year are by ordinance. So that process has to take place according to the ordinance in which this board operates.
And that's fine, and if it's going back to city council and saying we need to change the ordinance, or we're recommending, and this is what we want to do, then we can discuss that. But I just don't think saying that it's required by the ordinance is just the way we need to, do business.
Well, I'd like to share your concern, and this might be a question for Ms. Kamaria Pettis-Michael, in reference to the community survey that's also in the ordinance. We can probably use that particular tool to get a community response on how we want to move forward, not only with meetings, but maybe other agendas as well. So as we move forward, especially those that participated in the community survey during the founding years, let's begin to share some dialogue and discussion as we prepare for that community survey, which is also in the new ordinance as well.
And since I'll wait to get to him.
No, I'm done.
Anybody else? Okay, so that we can get out of here so Irene don't come in.
If you
She
will,
might
Dr.
tell me.
Collins.
I was saying I don't want Irene to get, but just want to make a comment about what Carlos had indicated. It even was brought up in our presentation to the city council, and they admitted that they had not made it. So of the 4, we had extremely low participation. And in addition to that, we had only 2 councilmen who had attended out of 4. And even as we go forward, Ms. Petticoat, I would love for us to have an opportunity to continue what we're doing. And if in the ordinance we're in compliance as we talk with the city council and do exactly what you said with the survey. We had a much larger attendance when we did it in collaboration with TPD and with the District 1, 2, and 3. And that's gotta be districts where some of the city councils. So if we still do it, but do it in a modified fashion, minimize the work on staff, and go where we're gonna meet the largest portion of the citizenry, that's what our goal is. And this was not very good at all. What we did previously was far better than this.
With that being said, please have an enjoyable and safe Memorial Weekend. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.